Badger fans, emergency podcast. Maybe the best player at the shallow spot on the team goes down. What does that mean for the season? What does it mean for the Badgers?
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. I'm your host, Ryan Harings, your team every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Really do appreciate every single person, whether you're listening in the car, listening at work, watching on YouTube, catching it later, however you're doing it, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Today's episode brought to you by Ultimate College Football, Ultimate GM, Ultimate College Football head coach is a brand new mobile game, completely free, no ads, 100% playable offline. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB for bonuses and boosts inside the game. Begin your coaching legacy today. All right, let's talk about it, man. Let's do the shows that we never like doing. And James Thompson Jr., redshirt senior defensive lineman, 6'5", really the stalwart on the defensive line, the best player on that defensive line. I'd be surprised if anyone had a counter argument to that. According to Colton Bartholomew, done for the year, or at least out indefinitely, I should say. I want to be exact. Out indefinitely is the report. Out indefinitely is never a good report. After suffering an upper body injury in practice. Man, if this was a show with profanity, I tell you, when I first heard this news, I saw it. Somebody sent me something before it came out, and my response to him was like Darth Vader. And when he first put on the mask, he was no, like 17 O's and a capital. It just stinks. This just friggin' stinks. And it's football. Texas has already lost guys. Rutgers just lost their star linebacker. It doesn't make it better. Like, it stinks. It stinks for him. My first response internally was just like more like selfish frustration, right? Because I'm a huge Badger fan. The season's about to be here, and he's a huge part of that defensive line that already is kind of thin. And then you think about him, right? Like, God, it sucks for him. On the precipice of what could be an incredible year, you suffer an upper body injury after working the entire offseason, after putting in, I mean, he's a redshirt senior, right? Putting in 5 years at the program, building towards this moment where he's going to be the leader on this defensive line. Year two of Fickell. It stinks for him, man. That just absolutely stinks for him. And I mean, I'm assuming the road to recovery will be fine. He'll be okay. But like, you look at the home slate, we talk about it. One thing we don't think about is the players that get to experience these games. And you think of the opportunities. These are once-in-life opportunities. You get to play in Alabama. As a college football athlete, you get Alabama at your house as a redshirt senior, and you're going to be playing a prominent role in that game against one of the most storied franchises in college football history. And just like on a blink of an eye, it's gone. I feel terrible for him, just on like that personal level. He's going to miss Oregon at home, Penn State at home, right? He's going to miss going to Kinnick. He's going to miss Bama at home. It's just, it's heartbreaking, man. And that's the personal side of it, right? Like that really, really stinks for James. And then you look to the team, and what does this mean? I want to start. Well, let's talk about kind of again who he is, right? He's the redshirt senior. I think I said in the beginning the best defensive lineman on the team. And I think he is that because he's the only guy that I think gives you a little bit of everything. I think he's by far the most well-rounded defense lineman on the team, right? I think he gives you, against the passing game, he had 3.5 sacks last year, right? So he gives you some burst there. He gives you long arms that can knock down passes, that can be disruptive in passing lanes. Guys like Curtis Neal don't give you that, but he also gives you some stoutness against the run. He gives you some physicality. He's a man. He's a fifth-year senior. Like, he's a grown dude that's been through a couple years of Brady Collins now. Like, he gives you the ability to play in run sets. He can rush the passer a little bit. Like, he's not getting a bunch of sacks, but he gives you something there. Like, he's not a nothing there. He gives you a net positive there. In addition to knocking down passes occasionally, being able to be physical and stack up the run and take on blockers. Like, he gives you a little bit of everything. I think he's maybe the only guy in the line. I'm going to talk about someone in a second who I think can maybe do some of that. But I think he's maybe the only guy in the line that no, I'm going to say it. He is the only guy in the line coming into the year that I felt comfortable saying, yes, he can do all of those things. I think there's some other guys at the end of the year we could look back and say, he could do it as well. But there are more question marks. So it stinks, right? 18 starts. led all defensive linemen in tackles and sacks last year. 3 sacks, 5.5 tackles for loss, 29 total tackles. Like, he was the biggest part of this defense line, and a defense line that we were already pretty worried about. All right, so what does that mean? Again, let's. I want to get into specific players in the next segment. A few guys I think need to step up. What it means for the program, how they need to fix this, because I want to be super clear too. Losing a James Thompson Jr. should not lead to a collective freakout. The reason it is leading to a collective freakout is because that positional group is not deep enough, right? We need to fix that. Wisconsin needs to fix that. You need to get 3-4 defensive linemen a class until you build these numbers back up, because you can't be at the mercy of, oh, dear goodness, we can't let anybody get hurt. And this isn't anything new. We've been talking about this for a while. It's not like we just suddenly realized we're thin here. But it's magnified in the moment when you lose your senior leader before the season. All right, so what do we expect to happen? I mean, I think Wisconsin was already going to play a lot of 2-4-5 this year. They're going to play probably some situational stuff in pass rushing when they just have one defensive lineman. Right, in those sets, I think Wisconsin's fine for now. Like, I think they're fine for now when they're playing that 2-4-5, when they're getting that extra defensive back on, when they're utilizing their linebackers. It probably means Barten is moving up alongside Curtis Neal, right? So you have Barten on one side, Neal on the other. I like Barten. I highlighted him in a previous show. We talked about guys who I don't think are getting enough hype and who are gonna outplay expectations. I had Barten on that list. I like Barten, another physical upperclassman. He's a guy who can give you some of what Thompson gives you from length. He's got longer arms. He can bat some passes down. He can be physical. I like him. I think he's going to move up to that one line, and behind him, you have Brandon Lane. I think it's those three in some type of rotation for the most playing time: Lane, Neal, and Barten. And then you have Elijah Hills, you have Cade McDonald, you have Dylan Johnson, who we've talked about. I kind of think Ernest Willer moves back to defensive line. That's just a hunch. You have Jamel Howard, the redshirt freshman. That's kind of your group, right? What this does is I think it makes it a little harder. And I know the coaching staff wants to be able to use the 3-man line once in a while. They want to be able to use more of a 3-3-5 when they want to, when they maybe need a little more girth at the defensive line spot. This makes it a little harder to start employing those situations, right? You can still do it. I think that 3-man line, when they go to like a 3-3-5, is going to be something like Ben Barten, Brandon Lane, and Curtis Neal. I think that works, but man, you start to get shallow, and you start to get it just sucks, man. It just sucks. And there's several spots on this team where this coaching staff and this recruiting staff and the general manager, where they've built up enough depth where you feel comfortable taking the hits. You don't want anybody to get hurt, but there's spots on this roster. You look at some spots in the secondary, receiver, running back, where there's enough depth to absorb blows. There's not enough depth on the defense line and the offense line. And again, I'm not breaking news here, but this is just about the worst news you could have before the season, right? And quite frankly, a season where, going off fall camp, there's a lot of excitement. Like, that defensive line was playing pretty well. It was starting to establish itself. And then just to see that senior leader go down right before the year, that's just got to be heartbreaking to him. It's got to be heartbreaking to Whitlow. It's got to be heartbreaking to Fickell and Tress. It just stinks, man. There's no other words to describe it. Like, this is the worst part of football. And it comes with the game. And by the way, really quickly, I don't want anybody to say, "Oh, that's why you don't get physical in practice." No, like, injuries can happen anywhere. And I've been pretty ardent in saying, listen, if you get more physical in practice, you're going to probably have more injuries. But I'm not putting any of this on the coaching staff. Like, it's football. And I'm curious if that narrative is going to come out. I hope it doesn't, because it's football. Like, people get hurt in football. Like, yeah, you are going to get incrementally more injuries if you play more physical in practice, but it's okay. Like, this is not a Fickell thing. Freak injuries happen. It just sucks. And sometimes it just stinks. I also don't think, listen, the last thing on the big picture before getting into specific players I think need to step up, I don't think James Thompson is like a star, right? And I don't want to sound too critical. I think he's a really, really good player. He's a B+ defensive lineman. But I think it's the hits, the depth, the leadership, the experience. I think it's the fact that he's the one sure thing you had in this line, in my opinion. It's those things that really hurt. But this is also not a situation where you throw out the baby with the bathwater. Like, the season's not over. It's a frustrating, really frustrating blow to a spot that doesn't have a lot of wiggle room. All right, coming up, I'm going to talk about specific players and also talk about a few reasons outside of maybe the obvious why this really hurts, in my opinion. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at iBot. Again, we talked about it before. Ibotta is the number one spot if you're just trying to get a little cash back, right? Get a little more money in your wallet. And we talked about it, like life's expensive. Living's expensive. Having kids is expensive. Just being a regular dude or dudette is expensive. You're going to the beach. You're going to the gas station. You're going to get taquitos, right? You're going to get nachos, sandals, flip-flops, back to school supplies. It's all there. It's all expensive. Ibotta is here for you. They are giving you cash back when you just do everything you normally do. It's a free app. You download it. You get cash back just by doing your normal purchases. It's the free app, again, on hundreds of items from places you already shop at. The average Ibotta person, the average Ibotta user saves $256 a year, gets that money back just by using this app. Again, on any Lowe's, Sephora, like Macy's, wherever you want to go, it's all there. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 for just trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Go to the App Store, go to the Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store. Use code LOCKEDONCollege. All right, let's keep going here. Let's talk about some of the other reasons this hurts. This really hurts. I want to start here. He was the only sure thing. And before someone says, well, Neal or Arcade, maybe, right? This is a guy who's had 3 years of playing experience. You look at everyone else, and this is a point I was talking, Justin and I were going back and forth as I was flying through Chicago O'Hare today, and we were getting a little testy with each other. I think we were both frustrated. But one of the points I was making is, and Justin agreed with this, this was your one option that you really could pencil in and say, I know what we're going to get from him, and it's going to be pretty good, right? You look at everybody else, how is Curtis Neal going to do with an extended workload? We don't really know. I think it's going to be fine, but there's a bit of a question mark there, right? How is Ben Barten going to do when we really are leaning on him? Ben Barten, I don't think has started a game. He's a redshirt senior. He has 20 tackles in his career. Now we're going to say, hey, we need you big time, big guy. And maybe it'll be fine. But again, it's another question mark with the increased workload. Kurt Neal, it's a bit of a question mark with the increased workload. And again, I actually am pretty bullish on both those guys for what we're going to ask them to do. But we don't know. We've seen it. We have seen it with Thompson. We could at least pencil it in and say this is the baseline we're going to get from him, and we can build around that. Brandon Lane, that was at Stephen F. Austin last year. He's looked good in practice, but I don't know, right? Anybody that's going to tell you exactly what you're going to get from him this year over the course of an entire Big Ten slate where the physicality is going to be 3 or 4-fold what he played against last year. Is he going to wear down? Is it going to be a little inconsistent? Maybe he's going to be a stud. Maybe he's going to be a good rotation player. Maybe it's going to be really inconsistent. Maybe it's going to be somewhere across that spectrum. Again, it's a question mark. Elijah Hills played at another transfer defense lineman, played at Albany last year. Same question as Brandon Lane. You start looking at Dylan Johnson, true freshman. Jamel Howard, redshirt freshman that hasn't really flashed. Hank Weber, true freshman. Again, the problem here is they're all question marks, right? And you can feel better or worse about all of them to some degree. I don't think they're all the same type of question mark. And there's upside. You can squint and see the upside to each one of them. And some of you don't even have to squint that hard. Curtis Neal is going to have a good year. He's going to be a solid defensive lineman. But again, with Thompson, he was just that rock, right? He was the lighthouse that you could coalesce your lobster boats around and feel pretty good about that wall forming. Now you kind of lost the lighthouse, and the lobster boats are going to be a little scattered for a second. It stings because you lose the one constant, right? The one thing you could really stick a pencil in and draw out a line and say, that's the benchmark you're going to get from him. So you lost that. And so now it's just a lot of question marks. A lot of players that have to either play at a higher level, have to play without a lot of experience, have to step into bigger roles. And we don't really know how they're all going to respond. And generally, when you have a bunch of question marks, some of them hit and some of them don't, right? Not all of them are not going to work. There's good players in this group. But maybe one of them's a year away. Maybe one of them's a little inconsistent. Maybe one of them struggles a little bit at a higher level. Maybe that's the pessimistic side of looking at it, but that's also the truth. They're not all going to reach the top end of what you're hoping for, which is why it would have been nice to have that constant with James Thompson Jr. The next one here is, I think you lose some of your short yardage situations, right? This is a much different college football game. I've watched football, since the early 90s. And I certainly have looked at it through a different lens over the course of my lifetime, right? Watching it when I was 10 and 11 is far different than watching it now. But it's a different game, right? It's more spread out. There's more spacing. There's more horizontal weapon there. You're just doing a lot of different things. That's why there's There's more speed on defense. There's more length on defense. There's more versatility on defense. But listen, sometimes it's 2nd and 1 at the 3-yard line against Iowa. And you got to just be able to be a dude in the trenches, right? Sometimes it's 4th and inches and you're playing Michigan, or you're playing Penn State and they're up by 7 and it's the 4th quarter with 3:29 left and they're trying to run out the clock. And they have 2 tight ends and they have both their stud running backs in there. And sometimes you just need to be able to put like 4 defensive linemen in the game, 5 defensive linemen in the game, and be tough and rugged. This hurts that. This, in those situational moments, this hurts the Badgers because it takes out one of your stalwarts, right? It hurts you in those situations. Because yeah, if you're in a 2-4-5 and you make it through the rest of the year relatively injury free, I think your depth is okay there. I actually think it's fine. Like you can rotate 5 or 6 guys nominally through those 2 spots if you're playing that 2-4-5. But again, there are moments in the game, there's drives in the game where you're going to have 3 or 4 defensive linemen in, 5 defensive linemen in certain short yard situations. This makes those moments in the game difficult, a little more difficult. The other thing I'd say is like the really good teams, they're sending waves of defensive linemen, right? Over the course of drives, as you start to wear down, as the season goes on, you're sending entire 2nd string defense linemen in there and they're performing at a relatively high level. That's what Michigan did last year. They would have hockey line shifts along the defense line. And they were able to do that because they had enough depth in those rooms where they have guys that are already developed and they have another group developing underneath them. Wisconsin loses some of that too. You know, just over the course of the year, you think of the depth, the ability to keep rotating in guys. Like, do we really think this is the last defense lineman will get hurt? You know, probably not. So if you lose another one or someone else gets dinged up or someone else is really getting tired, you just lose that. Obviously, that rotation just shortens, right? And again, I'm not saying anything anybody doesn't know, but these are the issues. This is why depth is paramount. This is why the 85-man roster is paramount. You have to build depth everywhere. And the Badgers are short on both lines this year. We've talked a lot about the O-line, talked about the D-line. Like it's a major problem. And I think if they don't hit the level that we wanted to hit last year, there's 1 of 2 things in my opinion that at the end of the year we look back on and say it was those reasons. One of them is depth in the trenches, and the other one is TBD doesn't pan out. And I don't know what that version of not panning out is. Maybe it's inconsistency, or maybe he really plays poorly, or maybe just gets hurt. Like all those things could happen. But this is it right here, right? It's depth in the trenches, and we're already seeing it start to rear its head. And again, at a lot of teams with better depth, they lose a guy like James Thompson Jr., and it's absolutely not a nothing burger, but it's not as big of a deal because they got a lot more dudes. And we got to get there. We have to get there. All right. We're going to take a quick break for our friends of the show. We're going to come back, talk a little bit about what the linebackers can do, maybe to help this situation, maybe some ways they'll tweak the defense to go forward, and how they can fix this going forward. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers, a somber show as the news of James Thompson Jr. getting hurt has kind of popped out there. Not good. Not good. All right, Badger fans, we're going to take a quick break for our new friends of the show, and we'll come back talking defense and how they can kind of get around this loss potentially. But first, you guys are going to love our new sponsor, Ultimate College Football Head Coach. You get to be in the shoes of the program. You get to be the coach. One of the things I love about this is you get to call the plays. You get to call the offense. It's a free new mobile game. Download it. It's free. There's no ads. There's none of that nonsense. It's not one of those fake Facebook things. It's great. It's free. No ads. You get to be the coach of the program you want to be. Imagine being the coach of the Badgers, right? Go full Paul Chris. Get 3 tight ends. Send somebody in motion. Middle tight end screen. Set it up. Next play, come back. Jet sweep. You get to control all the action of your program. You get to build your program. It is a great way just to nerd out a little bit more on college football, which we all love. That's Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Download it from the App Store or visit ultimatetacfcfb.com. And you know we're going to have a great offer for our Locked On Badgers listeners. There's a 100% free boost, which can help get your program moving in the right direction. Use code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, LOCKEDONCFB in the game store. Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Begin your coaching legacy today. You are absolutely going to love it. I do. I use it. Go give it a shot. All right, let's keep going here. Let's talk about so what does the defense do now, right? I mentioned at the beginning, this isn't like a situation where the season's over. James Thompson Jr. is not the star of the defense. Like I would argue, he's much more important in the functional role he plays than the overall talent level that is. And I swear to goodness, that sounds bad. It's not a knock on him at all. It's just that he's not the biggest star on the team. which is a way of me saying, like, I think the talent level on this team is good enough to overcome this. But there's some things they may have to do, right? We already talked about playing a lot more 2-4-5. I think linebackers are going to be a huge part of this. Guys like Pius and Lowry and Daryl Peterson, they're going to have to be able to hold up on the edges, right? When we're playing a 2-4-5 on first down, on second down, and opposing teams are trying to run the ball, can those guys stand up on the edge, be physical? On the plus side, they're all upperclassmen. They're all pretty good athletes. I have concerns how well they're going to be able to consistently hold the edge, but they're going to have to do it. Now, there's an interesting thing here. If Aaron Witt, who is the most physical, the biggest of those guys, maybe the best when he's healthy at setting the edge, if he can come back and if he can play, if he can be healthy, even it's just that run set, that edge setter, that could be a really big part in helping to overcome the loss of a defensive end in James Thompson Jr. If you can get Aaron Witt out there with the physicality that he has in the frame, that's the guy that can help set the edge. That's the guy that can help offset some of the loss of James Thompson Jr. in the run game. So I think that's something to look for. I was kind of thinking too, what have we talked about all fall? Like what has been maybe the best position on defense? One of them's been corners, right? Could they just trust their corners a little bit more? Could they say we're gonna play more of a heavy box? We're going to play a little bit more with Wooler up top, or not up top in the box, or Zachman or Kamoila too, or Brown, whoever it is. Maybe that's a way if they're getting gashed on the run. They're going to say, we really do like these corners. We like what Nazir's shown. We like Rico. We love the upside of Lucas. We like Lofi. We're going to play a little more man, and we're going to bring a safety down, and we're going to maybe help deter the run game that way. So again, I don't want anybody to panic. I mean, we always say in this show, fan how you want to fan. We'll never tell anybody how to fan. If you want to react with a nothing burger and say no big deal, we're good, awesome. Like if you want to react with the panic button and the meme with the dog in the room that's set on fire and you're saying everything's fine, but really your face is melting. I mean, that's awesome too. Like you do you. What I'm telling you, if I zoom out, is this is a huge loss, but it's a huge loss more in terms of the depth in that spot, which I think they can overcome if they stay lucky. It's not if they can stay healthy and the linebackers can pick up some of the slack, setting the edges. I don't think the overall trajectory of this team is greatly altered. Now, it just removes it. It basically removes your margin for error, though, right? I shouldn't say margin for error because it's really margin for luck. You just have to stay healthy on the defensive line, and there's nothing you can do about that, right? There's no preventative thing you can do to stay healthy on the defensive line. But I think there's still enough bodies there. Truthfully, I think there's still enough bodies there. I think if they can just manage to get a little lucky, and that's what it's going to have to be. They're going to have to get a little lucky. If there's a run on injuries in either offensive line or defensive line, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. But barring that, I think they can manage this. It absolutely stinks for James Thompson Jr. It absolutely stinks for him. Like I'm gutted for him. And the team is definitely better with him. I'm certainly not making the point because I do think he's the best defensive lineman. He's the most well-rounded guy, and he's the most sure thing. But I think the team can overcome it, either through the linebackers, through the guys on the roster already, or through maybe using safeties a little bit more in run defense and trusting those corners. Anyway, it stinks. There's no good way around it, but it is what it is. It's football. Next man up. That is the show today. Thank you so much for tuning in on Wisconsin, and we will talk later.